All right, welcome back. So we're going to talk about this time is size classes. So the picture that we've got up here is a bunch of different iPhones, iPads. If your eyes are really good, you can kind of zoom in and you can see that, we kind of started with a 320 by 480. They got bigger and bigger and bigger. iPhone up to iPhone 6 Plus is quite large now. iPad, same story, right? So there's some smaller resolutions in the original, and then now they've got all these resolutions. To be honest, these numbers are in pixels. Users care about pixels. Pixels are important to them. It's like, how much can I actually see? What's the resolution look like? How much does it crisply show an image? Developers, however, care really more about points. And so points are not the same as pixels. So they had to develop, back when there was an original iPhone, and then they developed the iPhone Retina, right? So it was twice the number of pixels per inch, right? So it was a much denser display. And what they decided to do to make life easier for developers is, instead of saying, hey, the old size used to be 320, the new one's 640, they said, hey, let's talk about points. And so they left it such that the number of points was still 320 wide and still 480 tall in points. So you can kind of see that's what this description was talking about in terms of points, which are in blue, and pixels that were in black. Then they introduced the iPhone 5. The iPhone 5 was the first one that actually had a change in the number of points. And the reason they had to change the number of points is because the aspect ratio changed, right? It literally got taller. So they actually had to introduce a new points. And they made it still 320 wide, so same width as all the previous ones, but taller. And then, of course, when they introduced the iPhone 6, they had, two more dimension sizes. There are actually a lot of good websites that talk about dimension info. I'm going to bring us to this one. So this is iPhone 6 Demystified. It's a website that concerned itself really only with the iPhone 6, not the iPhone 5. And so it compares the iPhone 6 against the original iPhone is kind of what it does. I'm going to go ahead and click on that link and go over to this page. And you can see that what they did is they kind of wanted to talk about points first. So the original iPhone had 320 by 480 points. The original iPhone just rendered that at 1x, so 1 point was 1 pixel on the first one. Obviously, the Retina, it was a 2x. And then they're comparing that to what the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus do. So the 6 is, these points and these points. And they're going to get rendered at 2x for the iPhone 6 and 3x for the 6 Plus, which is kind of interesting. And so then it's got a rendered pixels, which is a certain size. Turns out iPhone 6 Plus, they actually have to downsample that some, little detail there, for what they actually show on the screen. I'm sure there was some Apple hardware developer that really wanted the 6 Plus to be even bigger to get a nice clean 3, but it's not, right? And so then that scales it up to the physical pixels you see, and then that's how you end up with these different sizes. So there's a lot of sites like that. The main point I wanted to make is that you've got points, and then you've got some multiplier to get to pixels. So no real shock in what's going on there. And so just to kind of give you, the history and kind of look at things chronologically of when these were developed. So we started off with the iPhone, which actually came out in 2007. I thought it was 2006, but I looked it up. I guess it's 2007. And then we had the 3G phone, and really nothing really changed on those. And then we had the 4, and we had the 4S, and they were all the same number of points. Now the 4 and the 4S doubled the pixels, but as developers you didn't care, right? So in those days, when you made an app, you actually just put the thing on the screen exactly where you want it. If you wanted a button, you just said, hey, it's 200 wide, it's 100 tall, it's over from the left or the top this much. Everything was kind of like an absolute layout. Now, Android had to worry about constraints from the get-go, but iPhone really didn't. And then in 2010, they introduced the iPad. To be honest, the iPad was just a completely separate storyboard file. So you had kind of your iPhone storyboard file, and you had your iPad storyboard file, and you still got to do this absolute layout thing. The big change for developers is when you had to start using constraints. And so that happened with the iPhone 5, and then the 5S was the same, because it was a different aspect ratio of iPhone. So you had to start using constraints if you wanted your app to kind of look good on different things. So that was kind of a big year. Each of these was a big year for developers. And then, to be honest, with introducing 2 more sizes simultaneously with the 6 and the 6 Plus, to be honest, that didn't really affect us much because we're already used to it. We have to do constraints, right? And when they introduce more sizes, which I'm sure will happen, we'll just keep on using constraints then. So, I mean, if you think this table is complete, I mean, you're, of course, a fool, right? And right now, iPads are really nice because they're actually all the same number of points. They just might have, different number of pixels. They're all 1024 by 768. But I'm sure that someday there'll be a widescreen iPad. I mean, why not, right? So if you're wanting to watch movies or whatnot. And I'm sure they'll pick, since it's going to change aspect ratio for a 16 by 9, they'll pick something like a 1080 by 920. Who knows when that'll happen? But I mean, that's like something that could happen. And it won't really affect you because you'll be so used to designing with constraints that it won't affect you that much. Apple acknowledges that it's starting to get complex, right? So if you had to design for each one individually, that'd kind of be a problem. So what they introduced is a concept called size classes. Each device has a width and a height, and each one falls into either compact category or regular category. So right now they have 2. There's compact and there's regular. So, I mean, I think the picture kind of speaks for itself. Your width can be compact or regular. Your height can be compact or regular. And then that gives you 4 different categories for devices. So these are the 4 size classes. Then the question is, who's what, right? I mean, what's an iPhone in landscape? What's an iPhone in portrait? What's an iPad in landscape? What's an iPad in portrait? And so they've made these decisions, and they decided that iPhone in general has, in portrait, regular height. And they say regular height because people are used to scrolling as well, and the height is, what's considered regular. To be honest, my iPhone is pretty small. I'm not sure I'd consider it regular height, but they consider it regular height. It's what they chose to do. Landscape, people expect more pixels in the width. So it's kind of interesting that when you go to landscape, they consider that to be compact width and compact height, which is kind of funny that you went from regular height to compact width on rotate, but that's what they chose to do, right? So they consider that compact, and that's where that falls in. iPhone, 4, 5, and 6, all the same. They all fall in this category. iPhone 6 Plus, they decided to do different. iPhone 6 Plus, they said, portrait, regular, but it's compact width. That makes sense. But they decided that when you put it into landscape, its width was big enough to be considered regular. So it actually is the only thing right now in this other category of regular width with a compact height. So it's kind of interesting that they said the 6 Plus was different. It's funny because the 6 and the 6 Plus aren't that different. So it's kind of funny that they fell into 2 different categories. Apparently the cutoff must be 700 points because one's just below 700, the other's just above. But in all fairness, it is actually in real pixels 1920, right? In real pixels, that's pretty wide. So I guess I should not harass them about that choice. Then where does iPad fall? iPad falls into regular, regardless of whether it's portrait or landscape. So they consider when it's portrait, big enough to be regular, landscape, also regular. To be honest, that's a little annoying for developers because you might want to change your UI depending on the orientation, but you'll have to do it in code because with storyboards, at least there's no easy way to do it with size classes, right? So that's the categorization. How does this fit into what you do? You've probably seen in a storyboard this little guy at the bottom. Heck, I'll just bring it up. So you've probably seen this little guy at the bottom of a storyboard. So if you're in any storyboard, I'll close my master detail, and I'll go to the one in size classes, my project instead. And this guy at the bottom, it says any on him. What does that mean? What is that all about? And any means that it's these are base values for all layouts. And you've probably kind of opened this up and played around, but you may not have any idea what it's doing. But if you put your mouse over one, it's actually telling you all the same things I just told you. So if you put your hover in this upper left, it says this storyboard, if you click on it, would be specifically for compact widths and compact heights. If you went to the opposite extreme, it would say this storyboard is for regular widths and regular heights. So really, it's like there's 9 storyboards like inside of this, right? And so the idea is that if you want to make a constraint or you want to add a view that applies to everybody, put it in the any width, any height area. If you want it to only apply to compact, go to this guy. If you want it to only apply to regular width, compact height, go to this guy, and you see the pattern, right? So if you're in this category, and you can read at the bottom what it says. So this one is for all phones in portrait. This one is for certain iPhones in landscape, and this one is the special case of the 6 Plus in landscape. And then down here, it's the case for iPads in portrait landscape. So it actually told you everything that I had described to you. So it was already there. You already knew it. Those represent the 4 final values, but there's also the base values, right? So the real values are at the corners. If you want something to apply to everybody, you put it on the any storyboard. You could also put things to where it only applies to like 2 of the storyboards, right? So if you wanted something to apply to like all compact widths, you could put it into this area and it would apply to both of those guys. If you wanted something that only applied to regular heights, for example, you could put it down in this guy. And so that's kind of the concept. And what we're going to do next time is we're going to get our hands dirty with actually making an app that explores size classes. All right, we'll see you then.